If there's one way that you can describe the National Hockey League, it's to say that they are set in their ways. On today's edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast, it is Fan Take Friday once again. We begin with an interesting but popular take about the way the NHL structures the season. We'll get into that, your takes, questions, and much more right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can find me on most social media platforms at Synonym for Wet, joined as always by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can find Hunter on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Also, be sure to follow our show's account on Twitter at LO_Penguins. You can also find us on TikTok at Locked On Penguins. Plus, make sure you're subscribed on all audio platforms as well as YouTube, because guess what? Next week, we're back to dailies. We will be off Monday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're right back. And you know what that means? Hockey's right around the corner. Today, it is once again Fan Take Friday. We've got your takes about what you're most excited about for this upcoming season, some questions about the season, and a lot more. But before we get to all of that, though, it is time to do something that many hockey writers, podcasts, and websites love to do when we get this close to the season, and that is fix the NHL. This one comes courtesy of our pal on YouTube, Stereo Penguin, saying the NHL needs to adopt the international point system of 3-2-1-0, 3 points for a regulation victory, 2 points for an overtime victory, 1 for an OT loss, and 0 points for a regulation loss. Too many teams don't seem to care about protecting leads and seem to be okay with just getting the game to overtime. Hunter, I have my thoughts on this, but for the intro of this show, I have been yapping long enough. Let's get your thoughts.
You know, in theory, I wouldn't mind it, but the reality of the situation is the NHL is probably not going to do this. You see these complaints every single season. Well, if we had a different point system like this one, for example, or if we have another point system, it would make the standings a little bit different. But you've seen people out there do the math, like for this past season, for example, and the standings, Pat, they really would not have changed too much. Now, in other seasons, it potentially would have been a little bit different, but the NHL, they're very set with this point system. They like it because it keeps the standings close throughout the entire season. They really don't care if a team is a loser point merchant, if you will, and they just rack up 10 to 15 plus loser points and stay in the race, even though when you combine their overtime losses with the regulation losses, they are well below 500 as a team. They like it because it keeps them in the race, and it's like, ooh, this gets eyes, especially down the stretch. They're in the playoff chase. It gives more teams a chance to get in the playoffs, whereas some other teams where we know they're not going to be that good, obviously they're going to fall to the wayside, but for some of these middling teams, they really stay in it. So I understand where this commenter is coming from. I think it would be really cool to see how it would go as a trial. And I do agree with the sentiment that I think you might see teams be a bit more aggressive. Say a game is tied, getting close to the back half of the third period, and you're going for that regulation win to get that extra point. That would be nice. I just don't think the NHL is going to do this.
I don't either, but here's a way I think you could have the best of both worlds. And again, I'm extremely skeptical the NHL would ever adopt this, but it would be to take an NFL model to your standings. You're not changing the game. You're not suddenly saying we're going to play endless overtime in the regular season because TV networks, they have shows they've got to play, ads they've got to sell, and people got to go to work in the morning, and it's not the playoffs. You're not going to want to watch a 5 overtime game in the middle of December. But here's how I would propose this. You go to a win-loss tie system with no points. You have wins, you have losses, and you have ties. And here's how you would get to the tie. is the way I would see it. I would like to see the increased overtime, but we're going to put that to the side. I would love to see the 10-minute 3-on-3, but let's just stay where we are. The only change that we're going to make is to the shootout.
Yeah.
The shootout will be a max of 10 rounds. You can play up to 10 rounds. If you are tied at the end of 10 rounds, it is a tie. Just like with the NFL, you have the 10-minute overtime. If nobody takes the lead, it's a tie. So I think you could do the best of both worlds. If you win in regulation, it's a win. If you win in overtime, it's a win. If you win in the shootout, it's a win. If you lose in any of those, again, it's a loss. And then if you play 10 shootout rounds, it's tied, whatever, even if it's tied 10-10, at the end of the shootout round, if you get to 10 and nobody has a win, you have a tie. And it would probably more than likely cut back on ties. You can do the typical, easy to understand games up, games back. And it would only be a whole or a half point back. And that would be a lot easier for people to understand, because us hockey diehards, and even some of those who may not be diehards, we understand the point system. But to a lot of casuals, the NHL standings are confusing. People don't quite get, and I know there's a lot of people yelling at us right now. What's so hard to understand about 2 and 1? Listen, if you're not following the sport all that closely, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you just go to wins and losses and then you have an ability for ties, I think that solves a lot of the issues, and it gives teams more motivation to go for a win rather than, we got our point in the bank. It's not a conference game. Who cares?
Right.
Let's just get out of here. You need every win at that point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that part. Honestly, though, for the 10-round shootouts, I don't think a lot of teams are even going to get to 10 rounds. I would shorten it if I were you. Maybe say 5 or 6 rounds. If you're still tied after that and you've had 5 or 6 shooters, because once you get to, the end of the 3 rounds and you're tied, it's almost sudden death. If you get a save and then you score, you win. Or if you score, then you get a save, you get a win. Same thing. But
maybe I didn't say it. I can't remember now. That shows how great my memory is. I think I said max of 10 rounds, but
okay.
I would keep the 3 shooters. And then if you're tied at the end of 3, you do go sudden death, but you can't go past 10 rounds. Like, granted, that rarely happens, but you put that cap in place of you're not going further than 10 rounds.
I would do it at like 6. You get 3 more rounds. If you can't take the lead there or win it right there, it's a tie. Or better yet, let's just get rid of the shootout at this point. Like, you and I have talked about it a lot on the show. We are over the shootout. And it's not just because the Penguins have been utterly terrible at shootouts for the past few years. They have been. But the gimmick is just old, and I don't like games being decided by a skills competition.
But I do think if you switch to that win-loss tie system rather than a point system, you probably would get better shootout efforts, because you're not sitting there with a point in the bank once you get to the shootout. You're still working to try to get a win and avoid a loss. So I do think you would see a little bit more effort and creativity out of these players, because let's call it what it is. You and I have talked about it endlessly on the show. It's to the point now you can tell even the players are over shootouts, and that includes.
Oh man, you see the same move every time. I'm joking, well, I'm being sarcastic towards you, but it is true. Like, you see them make the same move, and it's like, yeah, look at their body language. They're over it.
And we'll do this one real quick because we're running a little heavy on time on this one. And we're obviously not going to be able to do this have to be a full episode of Let's Fix the NHL. And with hockey right around the corner, we've run out of our summertime to have our little sandbox episode here. But the other thing that I would want to change is the one that everybody wants to change, playoff format.
Yeah.
But guess what? I'm going to say something that I know people aren't going to like or agree with. The NHL is clearly dedicated to keeping divisions competitive. We see it with the way they set up the schedules. We see it with the way they want this current weird playoff format to go. If we're going to do this, go back to the 90s format. where it is all in division for the first 2 rounds. 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, the winners play each other, and then you play the other division in the conference final.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close to that now, though obviously you will have sometimes like the second wildcard team will sometimes slide over to the Metro bracket if you're from an Atlantic team, or a Metro team will slide over to the Atlantic bracket. Like sometimes that will happen, the same thing in the West, but a lot of these matchups are in the division. But I see what you're saying, where you just want all of it 100% of the time. For me, I prefer 1 versus 8. I think it's funny. You always see this question pulled throughout the season. A lot of the fans, they want 1 versus 8 back. Players, when they are asked about it, they want 1 versus 8. Team executives, when you see the insiders ask them, they want 1 versus 8 back. The only person, or the only, I should say, 2 people that I think like this format are Gary Bettman and Bill Daly. They want to keep it, and it's going to stay that way as long as they are basically running the show. Bettman, we know, is probably going to retire at some point, but Pat, we know who his successor is going to be, and that is Bill Daly. And assuming it is, he's probably going to keep this format.
I don't disagree with you. I think you're correct, and I think everybody understands that. And here's a way that I think, real quick, that I could keep everybody happy, including Bettman, Daly, and the owners. If you want to keep the wild card format, have a small play-in round, a best of 3 between the 4th seed and the 5th seed in each division. The winner gets the 4th seed.
I don't like that.
You get more playoff revenue. You make the games a little bit more meaningful throughout the year. And you always have that chance, if you do that, to have a team that gets hot and suddenly plays spoiler at the end of the year. And we all know we love Cinderella stories. But ideally, I would love, if they're going to stick with all this divisional stuff, go back to the divisional playoff format. And if you're not going to do that, I'm with you. Go back to 1 through 8. It was good. It was fun. It worked. Quit messing with it.
Yes.
But that is going to do it for the opening segment. When we come back, there is a rookie coming up, we believe, to the Penguins this year, and a lot of people are excited about it. We continue that on this Fan Take Friday when we come back right after this. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed sponsored jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed sponsored jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the time that I have been telling you about all of this, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to their worldwide data. One great addition can have a ripple effect on everyone around them. When you find someone who brings the right skills, attitude, and experience, it makes the entire group better. That's why finding qualified candidates matters so much, and why tools like Indeed sponsored jobs can help make that process easier. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through all of the chaos, it's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of Locked On Penguins will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it right on this very podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. We're back here on the Friday edition of Locked On Penguins. Patrick Damp and Hunter Hodes here with you as always. It's another Fan Take Friday, and today's question on YouTube was a pretty simple one. What are you most or least excited about going into this upcoming season? For this segment, Hunter, we're going to address something that was in a lot of responses on YouTube, and that is the potential debut of goaltender Sergei Murashov. We got a couple predictions for this one. Jay Gardonis says he ends up top 3 in Calder Trophy voting.
Okay.
Victor says he puts up a .908 save percentage with a 2.5 GAA. And Jonathan Campbell says He gets 5 shutouts this season. Clearly, this is a player that all of us are pretty excited for. So, Hunter, let's talk this one out and take it in this direction. What exactly is the expectation for Sergei Murashov this year, and what is his ceiling? We know in the ideal, he becomes a franchise goaltender. That's the dream. However, that is way off in the distance and a little bit of pie in the sky. So let's shrink that ever so slightly and say, what is a successful season for Sergei Murashov this year?
I think for this season that he belongs, that he is an NHL caliber goaltender. He's a 1B/ backup, maybe gets around 30-ish starts, 35, somewhere in there, finishes with above a 900 save, a GAA of maybe, I don't know, 2.3, positive in goals saved above expected, but a rookie season that you can be proud of that says, hey, he is still developing, but he had a good start, and he's now hopefully going to carry this momentum into the second season. That's what I want. I'm not trying to get carried away with my expectations, though obviously I understand the takes that some of the fans had for Fan Take Friday, because this is what we want. We want you to give us some of your hot takes, and some of them are definitely hot, and I would love if a lot of these came true, because it would be huge for the development and the just the next steps for the organization. If you have, for example, a franchise goalie, like say he becomes that helps your rebuild / retool so much. But again, let's not get there just yet. He's only played a few NHL games. He's got to make the team, and assuming he does, I want to see how he adjusts. But those are some of my realistic expectations for him this season. Just that he belongs and that he potentially has a future as a consistent NHL starter. Anything beyond that this season, I think that's just a cherry on top, to be honest.
My answers to this are going to be a little bit vague, but when I lay them out, I think people will understand what I'm going for on this. And the first one is, even if it ends up 50-50, and I don't mean starts, which is what I do think is going to happen, but that'll lead into my second answer. The good and the bad need to either be equal, or the good needs to outweigh the bad. I expect him to stumble a little bit throughout this season. I expect there to be a handful or more of starts where he's shaky, because as good as he was at the AHL level, it is still the AHL. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't count. It doesn't mean that it's not a factor, but NHL shooters and the speed of the game at the NHL level is much different than the American Hockey League. Yeah. So I expect there to be some wobbles. I expect him to have a game or two or more where you wince a little bit. But when we get to April, whether we're done after game 84 or we're waiting for the first round of the playoffs, I want to be able to look back at his season and go, there were more good starts than bad starts. Or if it's 50-50, say he plays 36 games, 18 of them were solid, 18 of them were okay or not that great, I'm fine with that, because he is still very young. He still has a lot of, hopefully a lot of hockey ahead of him. So if that's his first year in the NHL, I'm not worried. The other thing, though, is while I do expect Dan Muse to go 50-50 on the starts, if he goes on a heater at some point and he's playing really well, a save percentage above 900, a GAA of 1 or 2 for a handful of games, I want Dan Muse to kind of do, in a way, what he did with Ben Kindel this year, where if he keeps stacking quality performances, give him more starts. Don't wear him out. Don't suddenly make him your starter who takes on the lion's share of the work. But it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Shilovs and Skinner last year, where don't be afraid to ride the hot hand. You want to go 50-50, I get that, but if he has a good week, let him start another game, maybe another game. Then you put Shilovs in. Then you go back to Murashov. So if he can have both a solid year where he splits having good quality starts, and then has a couple wobbly ones, but you also give him a chance to ride out a hot streak. I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well. I still think to start the year, Artie is going to be the favorite as the 1A, and then again, Murashov most likely, if he beats out Blomquist, which I expect, he'll be the 1B slash backup where, say you have 3 games during the week for one. I think Artie would get 2 of them, and then Murashov would maybe get 1. And say you have 4 during a week, I think Artie would get 3, and Murashov would get 1. I think just to start off, considering the momentum that Shilov's built during the playoff series, I think they will want to reward him for that. And hopefully he can just be more consistent to start the season and throughout the year, because there were spurts during this past season where Artie, you're like, okay, he has the makings of a really solid goalie. But then you'd have other games where it's like, okay, the inconsistency, just wasn't there. And then you saw him in the playoffs, had the big game pedigree coming in, and then almost forced a game 7. He was playing his ass off that entire game, did not deserve that goal to go in. That save 10 seconds before with his blocker was absolutely ridiculous. But I still think he's going to be the favorite to get those starts. But if Murashov does go on a little bit of a heater, and maybe that's combined with Shilov struggling a little bit, I don't think Dan Muse will hesitate to be like, okay, I'm going to give Murashov the net a little bit. But again, I still just want to have realistic expectations about him. He is still very young. Yes, he's their top prospect. Yes, he had a nice few games this past season, but now he's about to probably enter the NHL on a full-time basis. Players and teams are going to have film on him. They're going to try to exploit his weaknesses, how he adjusts to that. I'm going to be curious, but I'm still very excited to see how he does. I just don't want to put out, insane expectations or anything like that. This is still rookie after all.
You and me both. And the one concrete thing I will say that I want to see him work on for this season is something that I said last year when he was up against the Predators in the international series. Is you can get away with this in the KHL. You can get away with it at the ECHL and AHL levels, but he's got to work on this at the NHL level. He still very much has a Russian young goaltender mentality where he moves the puck a lot, whether it's leaving his net to stop the puck or he covers the puck and decides, okay, I'm going to play it. You can get away with that at those levels because it's a little bit slower of a game. It's a little bit less of a pressure game. That changed at the NHL level. It didn't burn him in the AHL that much. It didn't burn him in his small appearance in the NHL this year, but there were moments where I saw him kind of get ready to play the puck, and I went, don't do that. Don't do that. But again, that is easily fixable, and it is something that comes with experience where he has played up to this point, he's had the ability to do that. He's had the time to do that. When you get burned on it a couple times at the NHL level, so don't be surprised this year if he gets burned a couple times by trying to play the puck or moving the puck when he should just freeze it. He will learn. He's a good enough prospect and a good enough goaltender that you only make that mistake a couple of times before you put your glove down on the puck and go, no, I'm just going to hold it. So we will see him improve on that, but we're really excited for him. The fan base is really excited for him. We'll see how it plays out in camp. We'll see how it plays out in the preseason and then during the regular season. But that will do it for this middle segment. When we come back, there are other young players and even some veterans that you guys are excited for. We'll talk about them when we come back right after this. But we've got one more sponsor to get to before that, and it's our pals at Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone work toward the same goal. And that is true in sports, just like it is in business, as we have seen this offseason with the Penguins bringing in players like Robertson, Declan Carlisle, Caden Korzak, and others who need a bigger role or a chance to grow in a better role. That is the Penguins' vision, and they are certainly sticking to it. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that is why you should be getting Odoo. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Closing out the Friday edition of Locked On Penguins, Patrick Damp and Hunter Hodes coming to you on the last Friday before we return to daily episodes. So once again, you know what that means. Hockey is right around the corner. But for now, we're keeping Fan Take Friday rolling here with another common excitement, which kudos to all of you bright-eyed optimists in our comments. No comments about things you aren't excited about, but one of those things that you are excited about is year 2 of center Ben Kindel. We'll obviously do a much deeper dive on Ben Kindel and the rest of the forward group over the next couple of weeks as we get ready for training camp and the preseason. But let's do some quick Kindel talk here now for the second time this week. And I want to say this, that I'm going to do this similar to what we did with Sergei Murashov. We're going to talk realistic goal and expectation for year 2 of Ben Kindel. So for me, I've said it before, we'll say it again. My realistic expectation for Kindel in year 2 is 20 goals and 45 points. Last year, 77 games, 17 goals, 35 points. I believe with a full offseason and an expectation of being a full-time NHLer this season, I do think he can make that 10-point improvement.
I am with you on that, and I've kind of had something similar. I wrote about Ben Kindel for the Hockey News last week, talked about my projections for him this year, and I even said 20 goals. If you can get him around 45-ish points, that's totally good for year 2 of his development. Hell, if you can get him to 50 points, that's even better, and I think obviously everyone in the fan base will take that. But again, 20 goals, 45-ish points, I'm with you. Plays on the third line for most of the year once again, but also I could see him getting some reps on the second line, because I do think second line center, that's going to be him for the foreseeable future. You know, once they make some more moves, for example, we know that this could be Evgeny Malkin's last year. Yeah, I know that Tommy Novak is signed for a few more seasons, but he's very versatile. He can play center, he can play wing, and I do think the plan at some point, even with Novak on the roster, is to have Kindel up as a second line center, and then you move Novak to the wing. So I'm glad that a lot of people were excited about Ben Kindel. I very much am. He's got a full NHL offseason workout routine. He's going to come to camp bigger. I think he's going to come to camp stronger and even more motivated than last season. A lot of people are also excited about Igor Chinakov. Pen 68 talked about how maybe he could break the 35 or 40 goal mark. Jonathan Campbell said, I'd like to see him score 40 goals this year. Hell, another person said, I'm pumped to get another season of Artie Shilovs, but that's because I like him. I know we have a lot of big fans of the Artie party. Very much understand why. Very nice dude, has like a quiet confidence about him, had that great playoff series, so I understand why a lot of people are big Artie fans. And hell, you and I both like Artie too. We just want him to be a little bit more consistent on a game-to-game basis during the regular season, but understand why people are excited about him. And then especially Chinakov too, had a great season with the Penguins, and he will definitely have a chance to break 30-plus goals this year, in my opinion.
I do want to respond to both of those, because they are two players I have dedicated a lot of brain space to this offseason. Starting with Chinakov, the thing that I want to see, and this is actually a bit of a continuation going into this year after the way the end of the season and the postseason went for him, I want to see what he does here to break out of a slump, because he wasn't playing poorly in any sense of the imagination at the end of the year and into the playoffs. We said it during the entire series that one just needed to go in for him, and it didn't happen. He was doing a lot of the same things. He was doing a lot of the right things against the Flyers. The puck just was not going in for him. So I want to see how he adapts to that, because sorry to anybody who's a Blue Jackets fan listening to this, not a great environment for him. It just never worked out there. So even some of his slumps, you looked at it and went, how much of this is his fault and how much of it is the environment's fault? We will never know, because he's now a Penguin, but I want to see how he adapts to that, because for the majority of his tenure as a Penguin up to this point, it has been sunshine and roses. So when the storm clouds roll in, I want to see how he adapts. As for Shilovs, we spent the entire first segment talking about expectations and belief in Sergei Murashov. This is also a guy who's fighting for his job. And with as good as he was those last couple of games against the Flyers, not only was that good to continue the Penguins season, that was a bit of a message by him of saying, don't forget about me. I'm still here.
Right.
This is still a job for him to take and or lose. So Shilovs is going to have to battle all season long, because he's got Murashov hot on his trail. And don't forget about Yoel Blomqvist, still has NHL potential. So Shilovs has 2 goaltenders hot on his trail. If he has a big year, it's good news for us as fans and good news for the literal team when it comes to success, but it is going to be a problem for Kyle Dubas and Dan Muse, because if you've got multiples, which ones do you keep?
Yeah, I get that. I still think you're definitely keeping Sergei Murashov, and definitely if he has a good year.
Yeah. I'm not saying you get rid of Murashov, but I'm looking at it as, what do you do?
Yeah, no, I understand that. And especially, if Blomqvist continues to probably tear up the AHL, they gave Shilovs kind of like that prove it contract, laying like, hey, we like what you did in the playoffs. Now let's see you build on it. And speaking of some of the more young players, this one comes from EJ. What young talent are you all excited to see, and who has shown the most promise in your opinion? Who should we be keeping a close eye on? So we talked a lot about some of the young players so far, but I'm still very excited about Harrison Brunick. Let's see if he can make the team. I know the right side is very crowded, but he's still going to give it his best shot. If he doesn't, he's going to start the season Wilkes-Barre, and I still assume that we are going to get some games from Brunick at the NHL level this year, mainly because, Pat, not all 6 of these defensemen are going to stay healthy. It is the Penguins, after all. So I do think he is going to get some games. Bill Zonin, I'm obviously very excited about him, considering how he played in juniors last year, how he lit up the AHL playoffs once he got there. Mikhail Olean, that's someone who you should be keeping your eye on as well. These 2, they're not in the AHL yet, but the Ruck twins, obviously, Pierce Bowie, keep an eye on him as he goes to college pretty soon. So those are some of the players that, we're excited to see. They've shown some promise so far. You want to keep your eye on. And then this one from Erica Franklin. I'm excited to see Sid and Gino piling up the points and accolades. 100%. We always want to see them keep passing NHL legends on the all-time points list, assist list, goals list, etc., breaking Penguins records. And person says, I also want to see Dubas finally trade some veteran forwards and give some young players NHL games, including McGroarty, Bros, and Avery Hayes. I do think you might see some of that potentially during the season. But even if you don't, as I just said, there's going to be injuries to this forward group. There are going to be players that come up from Wilkes-Barre. You saw it throughout last season. They used so many forwards in their lineup, even though they had such a deep lineup, because players just kept getting hurt, getting in and out of the lineup. You are going to see these players at some point or two during the season, and they will get at least a little bit of runway, whether it's McGroarty, whether it's Avery Hayes. I think Tristan Bros will get a couple games. Ville Koivunen is going to get a little bit of a runway at some point as well, especially because they just signed under that big contract. So I think no matter what, Erica, you're going to get your wish.
You beat me to it. My under the radar guy to watch, and it's not even that under the radar, is Zonin.
Yeah.
He did not look a single toe, finger, hair follicle out of place in the AHL. And he strikes me as a player, not a one-to-one comparison here, just talking situationally, as a guy like Ben Kindel, where and maybe this, again, not a one-to-one player comparison, just situation comparison, maybe even a Jake Gensel style, where he comes up and he doesn't go back because he just seems to work everywhere he goes. Now, again, don't want to put unrealistic expectations upon him, but it just seems like every time he goes to the next level, he does well and he sticks. So that's a player I'm really, really excited about. Last one before we close out the show. Got it in just under the wire on YouTube. My favorite YouTube name. Ryan Brust. Hot take. This team is getting 100 points in the standings, but finishing third in the Metro behind Carolina and Washington. Here's the thing. That's not even an indictment on the Penguins. That shows what an arms race the Metro is once again. Washington and Carolina. Carolina, obviously the defending champions. Washington, they're going for it again.
Yeah.
It is going to be an absolute, I'm going to make a really relatively old reference here. It is Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards in the Metro this year. It is going to be just an absolute fight all year long. And if you want to get between that and how good the Atlantic is this year, if you want to get into the East playoffs, especially from the Metro, you better finish third.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a dogfight for that third spot. Almost all of those teams in the division have a chance, maybe outside of Columbus. Now, I say that now and I get old takes exposed and Columbus makes the playoffs this upcoming season, right? But even the Rangers, for example, have an outside chance just because of their upgrades on defense. They'll have their healthy goalie. Adam Fox is still there. I don't like their forward group that much, but they've at least improved to the point where maybe outside chance they could get in, but it's going to be fun. The top two teams for me in the Metro are 100% Carolina and Washington. But man, if we get one last Pens Cap series to kind of close out this era, I know both fan bases would sign up for it, but the league would eat that up. Ratings galore. That is, every game is prime time on ESPN and TNT. Both of their top broadcast teams all over that series, and rightfully so. So I'm all for it if we get one last Pens Cap series in this era.
I would love it so much. But that is going to do it for the Friday edition of Locked On Penguins. Thank you, as always, for your comments, for your takes, for your questions. We appreciate it. And thank you for sticking with us throughout the offseason, because once again, we go back to daily episodes starting next week. We will be back on Tuesday, and we will have episodes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Then the week after it, we're right back to Monday through Friday. The prospect challenge is coming up. Training camp is coming up. Then the preseason. And then don't you know it, the regular season starts at the end of September, and we are your place for all of it. So make sure you're following us on social media. Make sure you're subscribed, and make sure you've got your notifications on, because hockey is coming. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I am Patrick Damp. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and we will be back on Tuesday.